Yeah, it's going on well.
On the far side. Yeah, the best.
Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome the Minister, the Hon Gerry Brownlee, Minister for Canterbury Earthquake Recovery, who will shortly say a few words. I'd also like to welcome the Honourable Leanne Dalziel and Aaron Gilmore MP, as well as all the councillors and community board members who are here today who've given us so much help with this project. I'd also like to welcome all the contractors and Orion staff who have all contributed so much to this positive outcome for us. It's a very positive day for us, a great moment where we can lift the conservation message for this area, and it's almost a year since the first quake, and to have something positive like this happen is just a great thing. So I'd like to now hand over to the Minister to say a few words before he cuts the ribbon.
Well, thank you, Rob. Can I acknowledge my parliamentary colleagues, the Honourable Leanne Dalziel, local Member of Parliament here, and my colleague Aaron Gilmore, also from this part of town, local councillors and other important people here. I acknowledge the presence of Transpower here today, and an important state stakeholder in the electricity industry. I think one of the things that you could say about the speed with which this substation has been built is that it's a bit of a triumph over the sort of slightly hand-wringing process in actually getting things done. And one of the things that we've got to do more of in the coming years here in Canterbury is get past that worry about some of the intricacies of procedure and just get on with the job. Here it is today, being open. It's operational, obviously. It's been operational for a wee while, but making a huge difference to the security of being able to live well here in this part of the community. So we've got to do more of this type of thing throughout the greater Christchurch area where we've suffered the earthquake damage. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate Orion on the way in which they responded to the needs that came out of both the September 4 and February 22nd earthquakes. 24 hours, I think, was the time it took to put everybody back on after September 4. February 22nd, 10 times as big, but once again a very short period of time before everyone was back in place. We saw the installation of some temporary overhead lines to secure various areas, and I know that many of the Orion staff worked extremely long hours during those emergency periods, and I want to express my admiration to them for making themselves available to do that. There's little doubt that this whole event has brought out the best in the workforce here in Canterbury. It's meant that everybody in their workplaces had to be a little more innovative about the way they go about things, and that in the long run is going to be very, very good for us as a whole community. So this project today, being completed in such a short period of time, is a representative project as far as what we would like to see achieved in the years ahead for recovery here in Canterbury. With those few words, Rob, I'm very happy to assist in cutting the ribbon to officially declare this substation open and operational. Okay, and here we go. All done.
Great. Thank you, Minister. Welcome along. I'll do a quick presentation, won't take very long, and then I'll hand over to Leanne, who's also got a presentation, is my understanding. So, 22nd of February, we had about 60% of our customers without power in the immediate aftermath of the quake that day. We have about 193,000 customers, so you can imagine 60% of that, it's around 100,000 customers without power. It's a pretty serious thing. It took us about 10 days to get to 90% of customers with power. Previously in September it took us 1 day, so it's an order of magnitude difference. If you doubted it, I'm sure you didn't. Cable damage was severe, particularly around the Avon River. We had 4 66 kV cables, the big ones, feeding this area, badly damaged. And so we had to do something. There was no way back, just trying to do some minor patches on that stuff. We really had to be decisive. We've had about 200,000 person hours of effort go in since the quakes. That's around 700 employees of various contractors and businesses around New Zealand contributing. We had people from Australia assisting as well. 360 kilometres of damaged cable, that's about 16% of our cable length damaged. And right now we have about 95% of our 11 kV cables repaired. But as I've said to a few of you today, the repair work continues because we're getting several times the normal level of faults on our system, and that'll continue for some considerable time as we discover these damaged cables. And a reduction in energy use of around 13% since February. And it will take something like 3 to 5 years to fully recover from this. You know, it's quite a big process. Here's just a graph showing demand, and the only thing I'd note there is that's obviously February. September back here and June further on here had very little impact on demand. February was the big one. Unsurprisingly, the CBD was out of action, is out of action. So a number of large hotels, for example, therefore big reductions in demand, as well as the white zones around the hills and of course the east. Well, there's the inside of the old substation. You can just see the amount of liquefaction. And clearly there's no way we could rebuild on that site. Just the risk of facing this sort of damage again is just too great. And you know, the shovel was a main implement in a lot of the recovery for those months, and there was an enormous amount of work put in. Here's some of the communications we did around the 2 temporary 66 kV lines. In fact, there were 3 in total. The very first one, which happened within days here, and then the 2 that we notified and advised people of. I can't say consulted because we didn't have enough time to fully consult with people. That would be the wrong term, but we certainly communicated as much as we can, and we'd like to thank people in this room for their contribution to that communication process, the public meetings and so on that happened. We used email, we used leaflet drops, everything we possibly could think of to get out to people. And one of the interesting things was the acceptance of the community. One example of that was that at Easter, we went out to the community with an email saying, look, there's going to be, at 4 AM on Easter Saturday, we're going to be putting concrete in. And we're terribly sorry about the noise. And we only got one response by email, and that was, you guys are fantastic. So we were staggered by that, and so we really appreciated that support. Seen enough of him? No, sorry, I shouldn't be so flippant. No, you know, the public meetings were great. Now, of course, there were people pushing back. They were uncertain. They were asking a lot of questions. There were people whose houses were badly damaged, the communities were damaged, and you'd expect that people would have a lot of questions of us. But overall, there was a tremendous acceptance by the community of the need for these temporary lines and what was happening in their community. And it's what was needed to get things to happen. And so, you know, I look back at those times, it was very humbling, the experience, because we were fully expecting, or we wouldn't know what to expect from the community, really. You know, human beings react in different ways, but overall there was a tremendous amount of support for us, and we really appreciated that. When we talk about the area we've just driven around, in fact, that substation feeds a far greater area than we've just seen, about 20,000 houses. And this is an attempt at showing that. Here we have the substation, the new substation, and this is basically the broad area that's supplied. So it's not just a few houses, a few streets, it's a massive area. We've got a lot of work ahead. You know, we've got a relatively small team, but we've got to restore the network to its resilience over the next few years, and we'll be looking to work with the community to do that. These lines we've just seen are temporary lines. We have a 3-year allowance for those lines, and after that we have to do something different. And so there'll be a lot of discussions had about what's appropriate as a solution for our community. Given the context, we have to understand what's happening with the land, what's happening with houses, so we can best develop a solution to that. And the earthquake's a big enough challenge, but over the next 10 years we've also got a lot of other investment we're doing throughout the community, throughout the rural area as well as the urban, and a total of about $750 $30 million worth over the next 10 years. So there's a lot of investment needed over that time. Thank you. Well, I'll hand over to Leanne.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to say a few words today. And I did want to acknowledge the Minister as well for making this a priority in his day. I know how busy he is, and it is so important that we have the support of our Minister for Earthquake Recovery at a time like this. Can I acknowledge my parliamentary colleague, Aaron Gilmore? Aaron and I sit on the Regulations Review Committee looking at all of the regulations that allow things like this to happen. One of the reasons you weren't required to consult was because of regulations that we were busy scrutinising. Obviously, I want to pay tribute to Orion, from the line mechanics to right the way through to the governance board, because I think every step of the way, every single person, contractor, stepped up to the plate when they were asked to do so. I've often described Orion as being a well-oiled machine committed to excellence, something that was evident from day one, which, as you've said, Rob, was almost a year ago to the day. But I want to begin by referring to the Bexley, Wainoni, Dallington and New Brighton residents who have allowed their amenity to be disturbed for 3 years as far as the 66 kV lines go, and permanently as far as the new substation goes. It's always challenging to have to face up to the reality that a disaster does impact on different communities in different ways. And for those of us in the eastern suburbs, we know this only too well. And of course, that can mean that some people are asked to carry a greater burden than others, but they carry that greater burden for the greater good. And I know that the location of the site for this substation has particularly impacted the view that the residents on the other side of Keys Road used to enjoy, and that there have been fears expressed about the location of the 66 kV overhead lines so close to people's homes. But because of Orion's total transparency, even under the extreme conditions it was facing, I know that I could confidently back Orion's decision, both in terms of the streets for the 66 kV overhead lines and for the location of the substation, because I knew how and I knew why they had chosen the routes and the location they had. And I should acknowledge their engineers too for bothering to sit down and explain that to me in great detail so that I could really understand why those decisions had been made. No one has ever questioned the need for the New Brighton substation to be relocated, and if that was the first time that you've seen the old one, then you can fully appreciate why it had to be relocated. No one could argue with the need to use overhead lines to bring power to the eastern suburbs when all 4 of the major cables that brought it underground were no longer capable of supplying the electricity. No one could doubt the extreme urgency with winter fast approaching and that the normal rules had to be set aside. But I would challenge anyone to fault the openness of Orion, which had no legal obligation to consult, as I've said, but which made it a priority to communicate the how, the when, and the why in a very direct and personal way. And this is when I saw the leadership qualities in Roger Sutton that have seen him take up this lead role in the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority, cycling to meetings of residents, bringing engineers and other technical people to speak directly to the people about the issues that they wanted answers to. It's never easy when not everyone agrees, but I couldn't imagine a more constructive engagement from an organisation, and I want to thank you for it and place that on record. I also appreciated the way Orion was willing to change its broader communication. It was very hard for people in the east to hear that we were 75% back on power, 80% back on power, 90% back on power, when we were 75% off power on this side, 80% off power on this side. And so with a simple changing, we were able to see Orion retain the good news. They could continue to say we're 90% back on power, but on the eastern side, we have got this number of households that are without power. And what was great were the stretch targets. That, you know, this is our aim, is to have this number back on power by the end of the week. And they kept doing that over and over and over again. And it was those stretch targets which ultimately, you didn't always achieve every single one of them, but you were very close to achieving them all. But they gave hope to people that the power was coming back. And there is a song that goes something like, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. And I tell you what, 16 days without power, and you soon know that electricity is a pretty important part of your life. Before coming here, I attended a small ceremony at New Brighton Catholic where Joshua Bull, a year 4 student, saw to fruition his Footsteps Quest Challenge, their home learning program. And that little bonnet over there, the little hat with those circles on it, with expressions of thanks from all around the community, is part of it. There is an incredibly long scarf that would probably encircle this entire room, which is also part of that project. It contains the giant hat and scarf contain the best wishes of approximately 2,500 Christchurch East residents. 7 other primary schools have joined in: South Brighton, Central New Brighton, North New Brighton, Freeville, St James, Wainoni and Parkview, and then the community have signed up as well. And all of those dots basically on the scarf and on the hat say thank you for keeping us warm this winter. And in the centre of the scarf, and I was hoping it would be able to, you could see it, but at the centre of the scarf, the word Orion sits in the middle, and surrounding Orion are the school's values. And I just want to read them out because Joshua read them out in his little speech. Trustworthy, courageous, serving, reliable, confident, caring, hopeful, accepting, honest, united. And Joshua said that Orion represented all these values. And I agree with Joshua. And he also wanted to offer back to Orion another value, gratitude. And that's what I want to offer to Orion as well on behalf of all of the eastern suburbs, our gratitude. We needed you to step up to the plate, and you did, and we will be forever in your debt. Thank you.
Yeah,